Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
The number one thing that contributes to customer loyalty is emotions. So move onward and upward faster by gaining significantly deeper insight and understanding of your customer journey and personas with emotional intelligence. With your empathy mapping workshop, you'll learn how to evoke and influence the right customer emotions that generate improved customer loyalty and reduce your cost to operate. Get over your emotional hump now by going to empathymapping.com to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who likes to lay it on the line, but does it with humility. Cort Dial is a native Texan, born and raised in Houston and living in Austin, Texas with his wife, Julie, their grandchildren, and children. Cort was the third of four boys whose parents were happily married until their deaths. Cort's dad was a firefighter and his mom was a homemaker. His family is Catholic, however, Cort attended public schools where he excelled in basketball and golf. When Cort was 15, his family moved to a golfing community in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, where Cort spent his days playing golf, fishing, swimming with his brothers and friends. Cort met his wife of nearly 40 years in high school, and they were married 2 weeks after he graduated from Oklahoma State University, where he majored in engineering. He immediately joined Monsanto Chemical Company, where he rose through the ranks and ultimately retired while in the corporate staff after 14 years. Ever since, Cort has been the sole proprietor of Cort Dial Consulting. Shaped by the first-hand life and death stakes of his early career as an engineer in 8 different chemical plants, Cort developed a profound commitment to the health, safety, and well-being of the men and women who design, build, operate, and maintain our world. That commitment has guided Cort most of his adult life and is the source of his belief that business results are best produced through people, not systems or equipment. The Dial clan owns and operates 2 businesses grounded in a simple principle. We've reached the summit of leadership when you can create extraordinary results while caring for people. Cort's consulting practice specializes in what he calls performance transformation, and his unique approach to leadership he calls all-in leadership. The family's other business, Trent Reynolds Player Development, is led and managed by Cort's son-in-law. Trent and his wife, Katie, is a youth baseball development enterprise whose guiding mantra is baseball is for a season, character is for life. Katie and Trent are the parents of Cort and Julie's grandsons, Max and Jake. Cort's son, Charlie, is a rising professional golfer, making the long journey to the professional tour. Today, Cort spends his days in Austin writing and teaching others his methodology. He is the author of the Amazon Top 10 business book, Heretics to Heroes, a memoir of modern leadership. Named the best business book of 2016 by Canada's Globe and Mail. Cort Dial, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Yes, I am, Jim.
And I'm glad you're here. Now, for everybody who isn't aware, we actually had a little bit of an issue with our first interview. So this is a redo, and I want to thank Cort for coming back and actually helping us make sure that we have a good recording, because the information that he actually provides, both in his book and just in his teaching, is very valuable to all of us and has a very unique perspective. So Cort, I've given our listeners a little bit about you, but can you share with us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
My passion is to help leaders capture the hearts and minds of their people and then focus that energy on whatever their business imperatives are. And right now, I just completed a 6-year engagement with a large company. And, I'm excited about who's around the next corner, who's the next individual leader that I'm going to be coaching.
I think you bring up a really interesting point when you mention that, and you talk about a 6-year journey. People oftentimes think that, hey, just go to a training session, or let's just have a 2-day or 3-day workshop and everybody's going to be better at, communicating and connecting. But that's just not how it works, does it?
No. What I believe forms a leader is a circumstance, a coach, and an individual who wants to grow and develop into extraordinary human being, extraordinary leader. Those 3 things together are what I look for. I bring the coaching, I look for the circumstance, and I look for the leader. And in the case of this recent 6 years, it was a gentleman who was in charge of deep water drilling offshore in Gulf of Mexico. And if you're aware of what's happened out there with the Horizon disaster and then the drop in oil prices, he had a lot to do to change his organization, make it profitable.
There's a whole lot of challenges when you start talking about that type of business and that type of industry and the different, level of, I guess you'd say, people, different types of organizations have, everything from the day laborer or the laborer, to very, sophisticated and complex, skill sets and jobs and education. And so when you start thinking about all of that, how does an organization bring those different groups together?
Well, there has to be a big game that everyone's excited about playing. And that's one of the key jobs, I believe, of the leader, is to articulate the vision, if you will, the big game we're all up to playing here. And in the case of this gentleman, his big game was, we got to be able to drill every well on budget on time the first time, which has never been done in the industry in the Gulf of Mexico. And that was a huge game for everyone. And like you say, in his organization, he has top 1%ers from Stanford, engineers, and then he has people with probably an eighth grade education out on his rigs and everyone in between. Ultimately, they were able to do that for 18 months and saved them about close to $100 million and demonstrated to the corporation, hey, this is still a viable business unit.
When I started, reading, Heretics to Heroes and, scanning over it, first of all, I think it's a really different and interesting approach that you've taken with writing that book, because it's more in the first person than it is talking about theory and ideas and maybe even practices and case studies about other companies. But this was your life.
Yeah, it's essentially a nonfiction novel, the way I look at it. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to have people follow my journey development. And then once I reached the point where I was capable of coaching others, what does it look like when I coach these others? And I wanted to put people in the room when outstanding coaching and extraordinary leadership was going on, have them see and feel and hear what it looks like. And what the feedback I've gotten on the book is, and excuse me, even the gentleman who selected as the best book of the year is they love it because it touches them so much and affects them emotionally and inspires them so much.
Definitely. And I mean, so for me, oftentimes we think about certain industries, certain job types, and the people who oftentimes, fill those particular roles. And when you start thinking about, engineers, accountants, lawyers, a lot of times they aren't perceived as being, touchy-feely, people-oriented type of folks. And so their leadership comes across as very structured and very distant. But you actually you kind of changed that type of a characteristic or even a stereotype within these organizations, and that's what's made the difference.
Yes. Well, in our society in general, if you can't touch and feel it, it isn't valued. I mean, what is the mantra in most businesses? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And one of the first lessons I learned as a young man, I was fortunate enough to work with a gentleman named Dr. Edwards Deming, who was pretty famous in the 80s. And he said to me once, Cort, the things that are most important for business performance can't be quantified. And that started me thinking about what does he mean by that? And so that's what's missing in most organizations. They have great systems and programs and processes, and they know all the behaviors that need to be exhibited in order to perform well. It's just getting people to do it is a challenge. And by nature, we don't follow procedures. We don't follow anything unless there's a good reason for doing it. And that's the leader's job. Whoever's at the top of any organization, one of your main functions is to give people a good reason to come to work every day, passionate about what's going on, and ready to behave in the ways that we need to behave to perform.
One of the stories that you talked about are situations, experiences, I guess I should say, in the book is you introduced something that I had just never heard before. And correct me if I'm not pronouncing it correct, but that was inshallah?
Mm-hmm. Inshallah.
Tell us about where that came about for you.
Well, one of the things a leader was putting in front of a major capital project over in Saudi Arabia was that we're going to build this thing we're getting ready to build, work 3 years, millions of man hours, and we're not going to harm a single person. And that anyone who's done that type of work knows that's impossible. But that's why it was such a big game. And I was working with the supervision of the initial 30 supervisors on that project, because it's always important to get the core there before anyone else shows up. And their answer to my question, my invitation was, can you sign up to build this thing without harming anyone, was no for months. And they kept throwing this thing called inshallah in my face, which is a concept over there, which essentially the way they put it was, it's in God's hands. We don't have any control over whether anybody gets hurt. And ultimately, I found that wasn't actually what inshallah meant. What inshallah means is with my hard work and God willing, it will happen. That's me paraphrasing it. And that's what I was taught. I went to one of the mosques in Bahrain and met with a teacher there, and he helped me understand it. And when I went back and confronted these guys and said, hey, you're not telling me the whole story. Ultimately, they committed to it. And what they came to realize was, it wasn't that we needed new programs or systems. We needed to start treating these men, and I say men because in Saudi there were no women. We need to start treating these men as we would any loved one. Look out for them the way we would our own sons and things like that. And ultimately, they worked 8 million man hours and didn't have a single person leave the project for any medical intention, which is impossible, but they did it. And when you ask them why they did it, how did they do it, they'll tell you, because I was a father. I became a father. I was much more than a supervisor. I was a father.
So, I mean, when you start thinking about the different generations that are in the workplace, thinking also about how these generations have been brought up, even going back to the whole, I have a day laborer, eighth grade education, all the way up to, the Stanford doctorate in engineering. You have a situation where connecting to those people at that deeper level is not an easy task. And so I know you talk about the big game, but you also mentioned something about the 5 conditions of performance. I mean, how does all of that come into play so that collaboration and that connection at a significantly deeper level than just, hey, here's my title and here's my job, responsibilities take place?
A lot of times leaders will ask me, okay, how do I capture the hearts and minds of people? And because what we really want them to do is stop working in what I call the systems and behavior fields. Not stop, but don't put any more investment in there. You put enough in there. Let's start working in what I call the self and social fields. And that's what's going on inside of people and between people, the social constructs in an organization. And so I've developed years ago this sort of quick fix or quick startup approach. And basically, if you will create 5 conditions in your organization, people will give you well beyond what they normally give you to get a good rating and keep the boss happy. And those 5 things are a big game to play, a commitment and confidence that we're going to win this game, especially confidence and commitment that the leader has, a sense of belonging. It's built in our DNA to want to be part of a group and belong to a group throughout all our evolution. If we were excluded from the group or excluded from the leader, it meant death. And so psychologically, we are very hungry for belonging. People are looking for opportunity to grow and develop, especially these newer generations coming in. But what's important is to give people those opportunities, but only in service, if they're in service of the mission and the vision. And then to work on people's positive, give them a positive self-image. No organization or individual can outperform their self-image. And so, for example, what I was working on with those men over there was changing who they were being. Who they were being were, like you said earlier, accountants. They were using the predictive, mechanical part of their brain to say, I know this is impossible. I had all my experiences. We can't do this without hurting people. People die when you build things like this. And have them access another part of the brain we have, which is the part that loves and cares and has concern and can see the impossible, can say, I don't care if it's impossible. My son is not going to get hurt. And I was trying to pull that out of them and in a sense have them shift in who they were being from being like mechanical predictors to human beings. You said it's tough to access these things. It's actually very easy and simple if you just become a human being and stop being a manager, stop being a supervisor, and start looking across at this other human being and interact with them as if you're interacting with something sacred, a sacred being. And in our society, we tend to turn human beings into its, and in reality, they're thous. And if you have this thou relationship to all the different human beings you come in contact with, you'll have a profound effect on their hearts and minds.
You bring up a really interesting point. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, there's several things that kind of hit me. And one of the things that I think about, and I kind of ran into this the other day just at the grocery store, is that, some people you just can't make that connection with, and they just refuse to give it back, even though if you keep giving it and giving it, you're just not going to get it in return. So when I start thinking about an organization, and I have, multiple thous throughout the organization, is that, there's some who are just going to, I absolutely refuse to participate and engage with that. I mean, what do you do then, especially if they're in a key role?
Well, if they're in a key role, you either need to move them into a more of a single contributor role, definitely get them out of a leadership role, or in most cases, they will remove themselves. People don't like to work in an organization where everyone's going this direction and excited about it. I'm one of the few that isn't. But the other thing I share with leaders is don't expect everybody to sign up immediately. When you work with people in the way that we were talking about here, you're basically creating a psychological container with your vision and with your leadership that you're putting people in. And it's like popping popcorn. You put the kernels in there; those are the people. Your vision, the future you're inviting them to become part of is the actual popper, and you're the source of heat as the leader. And if you do this well, some of the kernels are going to pop. But as in any popcorn popper, there's some kernels that pop early, some that take later, and some that never pop. So to expect everyone to pop, that's not going to happen. And so there's certain strategies for treating all those different groups as they slowly start to sign up and get enrolled in what you're inviting them to sign up for.
I think that's a great analogy. I mean, for me, I started actually visualizing all that, and it totally makes sense. And that is kind of the way it happens. I mean, it's simplistic in its vision, but I mean that is what occurs.
And the people that resist a change like this are very useful because they'll point out everything you need to overcome, all the challenges, all the reasons why it can't happen. And that's essentially what you're going to have to deal with. Ultimately, you want them and you want to guide them through these different stages, ultimately into exploring your invitation. And then you can't force anyone to say yes, so there is no choice. So as a leader, you have to be perfectly okay with anyone saying no, thank you. However, as you said earlier, if some of them in critical positions, if they can't find a way to say yes, then they need to be moved or reassigned or whatever.
So without a doubt, when we're starting to talk about all of this, especially the length of the journey that's necessary and the effort and activity that needs to go involved, there's a whole lot of emotion we need in order to be able to pull this off. And one of the ways that we look for that on the show is through quotes. And your book is just loaded with quotes for sure. But is there one or two that kind of stands out to you that you can share?
I guess the one that I always go back to is that you can't quantify. Dr. Deming, Cort, what he basically said was, Cort, and he said, young man, as you mature, you're going to come to realize that the things that are most important for safety, quality, productivity, any business result or human endeavor cannot be quantified. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And it caused me to begin a journey that I've been on ever since, which is what are all these things that you can't count, you can't see, they don't exist in time and space, but have a profound effect on our performance.
That is so deep and so profound in so many different ways. And I think kind of like what you've really alluded to with it as well, is that it's a lifelong journey in order to figure all that out and being mindful. I guess that's where it starts. And then, like you even said a moment ago, is that it's the whole self piece. All of those things have to start with
especially
me.
In a world that most people see this stuff as I've had it, people call it psychobabble. We've all grown up in this world where if it doesn't exist in time and space, it isn't real. That's it through the education system and through all the business. It's funny though, if you go back a few hundred years, just the opposite was true, where the mystical, the spiritual was all that mattered, and everything, science was evil. So all I'm trying to do is help. Hey, let's bring this other half back into its rightful place next to. I'm not saying the mechanical and the systems behaviors aren't important, absolutely critical. So my dad used to say this in old Texas saying, "You're half-assed whichever cheek you're missing." So I'm not suggesting we stop doing the things we're doing, but we have to start learning how to access this other half of the equation. And those who do, leave other people in the dust, perform at a level no one ever thought was possible.
That's a great point. So I know with the things that you're doing with your work, the book, trying to develop and mentor others, and really make us all in something that more people can actually participate in. But you grandkids, got a lot of things going on. What's one of your goals?
One of my goals is to write a second book, which is about the how to do what I do. I've created this thing I'm calling a summit, which has captured the entire process and all the materials involved. And I'm now hosting these very small groups to come spend a week with me in Austin and learn how to do what I do. And people who would attend that are like people that are leading a major change in an organization, or coaches, those type of folks. And then the second big thing, as I said, I'm working on is writing a second book, because a lot of people have loved the book and said, now how do I do what I read about in that book?
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement, along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Cort, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Cort Dial, are you ready to hoe down?
I am ready.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I've sort of been spoiled because I've never had to look for clients. And now I'm trying to figure out, how do you reach this broader audience and give away, in a sense, give to others all that I've created over the years.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
We already talked about it. Most things that are important for performance can't be measured.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
Because I always I had this knack of knowing what needed to be said or was dying to be said or asked at the moment, and I was willing to ask it.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
The ability to interpret circumstances in the way that best serve the people I'm leading.
What would be one book you'd recommend to our listeners? It can be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to Heretics to Heroes on your show notes page as well.
Inspirational Presence. It's by a gentleman named Jeff Evans.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Cort Dial. Okay, Cort, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
Storytelling. And because it affects people emotionally, captures them, their hearts and minds.
Cort, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Yes, I've actually created a landing page on my website. It's cortdial.com/fast leader. And that will tell them everything about me.
Cort Dial, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.